In dysfunctional and narcissistic systems, the real self, the authentic self of the child, from day one, the enemy starts to thieve and steal and destroy so that that child is not allowed to truly grow in and know their authentic selves. Hello, welcome to the channel. This is Leilani Simon from Seeking Wisdom Coaching, and today we are going to talk about how narcissistic and highly dysfunctional family systems won't allow a child to grow into who they really are designed to be. Now, instead of being allowed to be their real selves, each child is assigned a role to play, whether that's a scapegoat, a golden child, an invisible child, a caretaker, a troublemaker. Maybe they're a comedian and they become the mascot. And yes, the parents who are choosing the roles of the children will look at the characteristics of that children when that child is young and see what characteristics from each child would be better suited to which role. Now, I'm not saying that those parents are even doing that on purpose, but it's a system, it's in the nature of the system. It is systemic. There is a stronghold over the system that has the system glued into place. Now, that system uses emotional reactions, let's leave it at that, as the glue that binds the system all together. Also, as the glue to the system is shame. Now, narcissistic people themselves are a very shame-based personality. They won't admit it. They will tell you that they have nothing to be ashamed of and zero regrets. But the point is, deep down somewhere there is a deep insecurity, and that insecurity is about their self-worth. And that's why they've built a false facade so that they never have to look at that. And most of them will never look at that. They need to feel, to taste that shame somewhere else. It's part of the natural laws of the universe that whatever they are feeling deep down, they need to somehow experience it in the universe around them. And so, who better to do that with than their own family? And they need to make someone in that family feel shame so that they can live their own shame from that person. But the scapegoat isn't the only one to be shamed into their existence. Shame will be used for each individual whilst moulding them into their specific roles. The golden child might not be so overtly shamed, but in a sense they are, even though it's covertly, because they're also not allowed to become their true, authentic self. Yes, the way that they're trained seems nicer and they seem to have an easier life. On the surface, superficially, physically, yes, they do. They get the accolades, they become successful, they get the house, they get the car, they get everything, whether it's handed down from the family or just supported so that they achieve those things. But they will never be able to take all the credit for the things that they've done because the narcissistic parents are going to do that for them. It's all going to be because of what the narcissistic parents did for them. So the real self of the child is always, it's dismissed, it's ignored. In the case of the scapegoat, it is most certainly ridiculed. It may even be ridiculed in other roles in the family, because self-expression is not going to be allowed. That's going to be stifled. So each child, in whatever role they're placed into, is trained to be tuned in to the dysfunction of the whole system, to the systemic strongholds. And even the golden child, even if they just, because they're so used to receiving the praise for what they have achieved, it can become a drug. Well, it does become like a drug for them. So if they don't then receive that praise, that in turn can give them a sense of shame, because then they feel like, oh, I haven't done whatever I need to do to receive the praise that they've become so accustomed to. So each person is learning that being their real self is not on. And the only way they can go along to get along is to join in with the emotional thinking of the family. It's like this stronghold has one big radio system sending out signals, and people are going wrong, so to speak, in the family according to the system if they are not tuned in to the exact frequency of that dysfunction. And this is how narcissistic or highly dysfunctional parents can rob us of our ability to build healthy boundaries. Now, a healthy boundary isn't actually like a 10-foot thick brick wall. It's actually more porous. Two researchers called Payne and Hunt actually described it really rather well. They described it as a cell wall, like a cell in your body, and that a healthy boundary, like of the cell wall, it will let in the nutrients it needs to, it can excrete the rubbish it needs to, and it's also a barrier and a defense towards things that it needs to stop being able to come in. You see, if we've got a 10-foot brick wall there, then it's easy to not let anything in, never trust anyone ever, and then sometimes we don't get the nutrients we need. You see, in our healing process, it's quite good if we can find safe people. It's very helpful. It's part of our journey as human beings to be able to connect with others. However, because our boundaries were not allowed to be developed when we were younger, and because we weren't allowed to feel safe with being our true selves, when we are our true selves as adults with safe people, it can actually feel really dangerous. It feels against our intuition to be able to trust in that situation. We might find ourselves apologising for just sharing something that was really quite fine to share with that person. Yes, it was very personal. Yes, it put us in a vulnerable situation. But if that's a safe person, they're not going to use that to throw any mud at you. They're not going to use that against you in the future. And so healthy boundaries let in some of the love, excrete some of the rubbish, and defend ourselves from attack, like a healthy immune system. And to have a healthy system that has healthy, porous, but protective boundaries, we really need to learn who that authentic self is. How do we do that? How do we know who we are after growing up in such a system? Well, we need to start practicing and become disciplined in recognizing our own true feelings, our thoughts, our decisions, our choices, our needs, our experiences, everything from inside, so that if someone comes to me and they mock me or they want me to come into agreement with them that I'm, doing something wrong that I don't actually think is wrong, I just do it differently to how they would do it. Let's take parenting, for example. That's the prime one. Lots of people have different opinions in how parenting should happen. And someone else may give you their opinion. And you can very simply respond, if you can train yourself into the whole, I appreciate you telling me that. And that's how you would do it and how you feel. However, from my perspective, I would rather do it this way. It doesn't have to be a drama. It doesn't have to be uncalm. But it's very difficult growing up in a dysfunctional or narcissistic family because we may be trained to just go along to get along, to acquiesce. And then 10 minutes, half an hour later, we're thinking, hey, hang on a minute, I can't believe I actually agreed with them or I apologised for myself or whatever, when I actually don't. I don't feel sorry for it. I'm quite happy with the way I'm doing things. And gradually, as we learn what our inner world is truly like and what we really think, and what we really feel, and that we're quite sure why we made those decisions in life, we can practice becoming more strong and more aware in that. And as we do, then on the outside, we can be much more flexible in our approach to other people. They're allowed their opinions. I mean, is it rude if I say everyone has a place that they excrete from? I don't want to be rude on camera for YouTube. And likewise, it begins with an A. Everyone has that kind of hole, and everyone has an opinion. And that's quite helpful sometimes. And also the so what technique is helpful. So they think that they have these opinions at the time. It kind of even sounds or seems justified because there may be some flustered situation. But you know what? So what? And that's also a useful 2 words to get into the head to help retrain ourselves into these porous boundaries and giving ourselves a calm chance and space to look inward and say, okay, what's my true thoughts or feelings in this situation? Because systems feelings are not only in the family, but they carry into the wider world, into the workplace, into the church. These systemic strongholds are everywhere. And systems guilt is not real guilt. So, for example, let's say your mum says, you need to come and do whatever this Sunday with the whole family. However, you have other plans for that Sunday already, sorted. But part of you is feeling guilty. But you've got to look at the situation. Is it really that you feel guilty, like that you really should be there? Or is it you feel this kind of guilt because you don't know how to say no to your mum and it's kind of awkward and you know she's going to be upset? That's not true guilt. Because when we grew up, we were not allowed to become our true emotional selves, then we don't know what's real guilt or what's not real guilt until we really take a step back and think about it. And that was part of how these dysfunctional systems steal our real selves. And it can go generation after generation after generation. But we are here to break that chain of generational conditioning in these dysfunctional systems. Within narcissistic family systems, we learn that all our feelings, all our thoughts, any that we have should only exist to serve this greater system. We're basically being controlled, and we're basically meant to act as puppets. And so we learn that anything and everything that we do should be towards helping those narcissistic parents feel however it is they want to feel. We learn that everything we do is about managing the narcissistic person's or the very dysfunctional person's reactions. The issue is we get so accustomed to doing that we actually start to feel bad if we do anything else. We start to self-police ourselves. And we use this false guilt of the systemic stronghold to police ourselves. That's the false shame that we use to glue ourselves to the system and into the role that the system has assigned us to play out. So those who grew up in dysfunctional family systems, which is a lot of people, or narcissistic family systems, as an adult, they end up hesitating because they're not strong, they're not self-secure when they emerge into adulthood into who they really are. Who am I? What is my authentic self? And it takes years sometimes to even start to ask these questions. And another issue about this is that then those people who grew up in these systems can start to look outward always for the validation of their own feelings, or, they let their own feelings ride on how other people are feeling. And so you could be having a really good day and then someone calls you, and because their feelings are all over the shop, especially if there's someone kind of close to you in the family system, it can put you off of those great feelings that you were in. You know, it can like shift the mood of your day. That would be a better way to put it. Whereas if we'd been able to develop those boundaries when we were younger and to, you know, grow those porous boundaries, then when someone comes to us with their rubbish, for want of a better word, we would be able to let in what is required and also excrete what is required for our own health, our own emotional and psychological health and spiritual health, of course. And also on the other side of the coin, if we haven't grown up to truly trust who we are innately, who God knitted us in the womb to be, then we can also find ourselves not trusting nearly everyone. And even if we do learn to trust someone, like we cognitively know that we trust this person because we know that this person is a safe space. We've known this person for years. We've kind of tested the waters with just sharing a little bit of personal information. And then one day we decide to let it, not all out, but a fair bit. And at the end of it, we're kind of left reeling, thinking, why did I tell them all of that? Oh no, does that make me like bad or sloppy to have told them all of that? Does that make me look like a wuss? You know, this kind of thinking. But that's not true. It is perfectly valid to be vulnerable with a safe person. That's how we learn to connect. That's how we learn to share. And human beings need to learn to connect and share. But if we practice this slowly, over time, with very safe people, whether it's a therapist, a counsellor, a coach, a best friend, someone that you truly know won't take what you've told them and turn that into a shame bomb to throw at you. So you've tested the waters a little bit already, and then you've even gone deeper. And even though that person's not reacting in any bad way, it can feel a bit awkward and, you know, you feel like apologising for yourself for taking up too much space. But we're allowed to take up some space. That's what we're here on the earth to do, and that's okay. So we need to learn to speak from a place of calm, because then we'll be able to evaluate all these situations for what they really are. The issue is, in the systems of dysfunction that people often grow up in, they've learnt to speak from a place of anxiety, whether it's oversharing, or it's kind of undersharing by like putting up this big 10-foot brick wall or 10-meter brick wall or whatever. Yeah. If we can practice through discipline, just trying to be the calmest person in the room all the time, we're going to fail. And that's okay. We just get back up again and continue in the practice. It takes time. A baby will fall down many times before it learns to walk. We haven't learnt, you know, if you've grown up inside a dysfunctional family, to truly be aware of the inner self, of one's values, of what one feels one's true purpose is, of one's feelings, of one's thoughts. And I don't mean system feelings. I mean learning to be aware, to self-differentiate one's own true feelings from those system feelings. And the more that we manage to be able to do that, the more that we know the inner self, the more those boundaries will just naturally place themselves into place, and the more free and flexible we will become in our connecting to other human beings. Well, if you got this far in the video and it gave you something of value, I would invite you to please subscribe and definitely to please like. It helps the algorithm. And so, yeah, this is Leilani Simon from Seeking Wisdom Coaching. If you want to get in touch with me for any coaching needs, then just head over to my website. It's in the description box below, and I look forward to hearing from you.